which I'm going to try to show you how we can use Commandline tool within the Eclipse Workbench. My name is Koen Aers. I work for JBoss at Red Hat. And I worked there already since 2004, so quite some time. And I've been always involved in the tooling. At the beginning, mainly in providing tools for JBPM, the workflow tool. And now recently, well, since a couple of years, Forge, and recently as well, JBoss, the Hibernate tools. Okay, so a little bit of the agenda. So I'm going to talk first a bit about the Forge history, why this thing came into existence, and why, what the use cases are or were. And then I'm going to discuss the command line versus the IDE, the advantages of both of these paradigms. But a lot of the talk will be just demo. I will just show what Forge is and how to operate it and what it looks like in Eclipse and what kind of advantages it can bring you. And then finally, before wrapping up, I will talk a little bit about how the integration was done with Eclipse. So if people start new Java, especially in the enterprise Java world, if they have to start new processes or new projects, oh, okay, there is a lot of stuff that a beginning developer needs to know. So sometimes, beginning a Java project can be really, really daunting. This is taken, I don't know what it looks like nowadays, but it's taken from the Oracle website last year, I think, almost a year ago, from the Java EE overview page, right? So this is what you get. So you have like an enormous amount of boxes. Each of those boxes is a framework, and you need, as a beginning developer, you need to, where do you start? How do you, if somebody asks you, give me a JSF application with a database backend, how can you get going with all these things? So there is a large startup cost. Also, there's a lot of gotchas. You need to know what initial values are, configuration, all that kind of stuff. Details that you need to know. And most of all, integrating all these different pieces together. So this is only an example of Java EE, but it also applies to other frameworks or other pieces of software. So one of the solutions that the solution that we came up with is a tool called Forge that helps you to start easily with a Java project and add different of these capabilities, of these functionalities in a piecemeal way. So you don't have to download a big example application and then start to modify it without really understanding what is going on. You just start create a new project, and then one after the other, you can install capabilities such as persistence, for instance, or JSF, or testing with different test tools. So the original idea for Forge was to make a command line tool. And for those of you who know, it resembles a bit like a little bit on a tool like Ruby, Ruby on Rails or Spring Roo. But it has a little bit of a different focus. So this is what it would look like on the command line, right? You just have a shell and a prompt, and then you can start going, create a new project, right? It asks you where should I create it, and then it just creates the project, right? So a command line tool, why? Because a lot of the developers, they like command line tools because they can type faster than they click. You have things like tab completion. So for instance here, if you don't know what to do, you type tab and you get a number of suggestions that show up. And also you can script certain things. So here you could write a script and then execute it in the Forge shell, and then all the commands would be executed one after the other. So that is kind of a nice way of doing stuff. But of course, there's a lot of people that also like to use IDE because that also provides a lot of benefits. So we're here at an Eclipse conference. Obviously, everybody is interested in the Eclipse Workbench. So what does it provide you? Well, it provides incremental builds. Yeah, you don't have to type a Maven build command every time you want to build. You can navigate in the workspace, with the navigator view, explorer views and such. There's an outline for classes or other files. You can do debugging, and we can have rich form editors to edit your files as well. So there obviously was a use case to integrate the command line tool into Eclipse, and that's what I did. So we can have our cake and eat it. We can just use the Forge tool now in Eclipse. So I have here an Eclipse Juno installed with one nightly build of JBoss tools. And with JBoss tools comes the Forge console. So you see here that Forge is not running. You can just start it. I also have a server installed already, pre-installed, JBoss AS7 server, which we're going to use. Because for the demo, I want to create a little, initially, I want to create a little JSF application with like a to-do application with tasks and two entities that can be persisted with a front end. Right. So so one thing we're going to do first is create a new project, right? Just like we did on the command line. So we create a new project. It has a name. You see, each time I hit the tab, it suggests me, it completes the command. I will name it to do, for instance, right? It asks me the directory where it wants to install the new project. I click yes, and you can see it creates the project just like it did on the command line, but then automatically the project gets imported in the Eclipse Workbench. There is one thing that is needed, or that is provided by default. Every project that is created is a Mavenized project. So that's actually the only thing that Forge relies on. It might change in the future, but for now, for the version 1.0, it's automatically a Mavenized project with a POM file. Okay, so let's continue this application and try to add persistence, because I told you it's going to be a JSF application with two entities. Now, I cannot create an entity here because I don't have the persistence set up, but Forge helps in a good way here. So you can have a command persistence, or there is a command persistence, or basically a plugin, right? All the commands that Forge knows about are contributed via Forge plugins. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that later. So there is a persistence plugin, and the first thing that the persistence plugin asks is to set it up, set up command. And still, I don't know what to do, but I can hit the tab, and it asks me for a provider, a persistence provider. And there are a number of persistence providers that are provided by default. I'm going to use Hibernate. It also asks me to specify the target container. So I can choose between a number of different containers. The one I will use here is JBoss AS7, as I have installed it here and running it there already. Okay, And then it's going to ask me which version of the JBoss Java EE BOM that I want to use. So I'm going to go with the last one. Do I want to install the metadata generator? No, I'm just going to go by the default, and I also don't want the extended APIs of Hibernate. So the command is run, persistence is installed, and you can see there is a persistence.xml file created and opened automatically in the editor, in which there are some reasonable defaults, right? So I'm going to target the example DS data source with a number of default Hibernate settings. Right, now that I have persistence set up, I can start to create entities, right? Let's create an entity named. So without persistence installed, this entity command wouldn't even be possible, yeah? So it's only because the persistence is enabled, because I have installed this capability, that my entity command gets enabled and I can create an entity. So the first entity I want to create is a task. I'm going to go with the default package to create it in. So it creates the entity, it opens the Java editor, and you can see there is a default entity that has been created with a number of default things, the ID and a version string, a version number, and that's it. So to add additional stuff to the task, for instance, a description, I have the field command at my disposition. You can see that the context where I'm in now automatically has changed. So I'm not in the project anymore, but I'm in the context of the Java file. And there's something interesting. I can type ls there, and it will just provide me all the fields and the methods of the. So it acts like a normal command tool, even within the context of a Java class. So I can create a field. It's going to be a string, description. So it adds the field. You see automatically the focus on the. So this is an example of the integration that has been done automatically. You can do stuff in your workbench because you know what things have been issued, what commands have been issued. I'm going to create some more fields. Fields, Boolean, for instance. Named. Done. Okay. Well, let's keep it at that. And then the other entity that I want to create is a participant. Right, participant has a name, fields, string, named, name, and it has a number of tasks to do. So that's a field, one to many, you can have multiple tasks, named tasks, field type. So I can just go ahead and press tab, and it will just try to suggest whatever it has. So I want to have this field type. And I want to create an inverse field name in the task object. In the task class, I want to have an inverse field name called owner, who owns the task. Right, and so now it creates this, this particular field. All right, so after having done this, I want to create my web application, and this is fairly similar to adding persistence to this project. I can set up something called a plugin that is called a Scaffolding Plugin, and the Scaffolding Plugin allows you to basically generate a simple user interface, a CRUD user interface for the objects that are there that are available. So I'm going to set it up, and the first thing it's going to ask it's going to ask me is which scaffold type you want to use, because by default this is JSF, Java Server Faces. That's what I'm going to use, but you could install different scaffold types and also different scaffold providers that can provide you with the scaffolding. So I'm going to use the ones that are installed by default, but it's possible to plug in other ones. Then it asks me, it says, okay, you want to create a web application, a JSF application. The target of this application is not a jar, as it currently is in your project, as it currently is defined, but a war. So is it okay to change that? I'm going to say it's okay. And then the last thing it asks me is where in the web root should this application live. I'm just going to go with the default, which is the root. Now, you can see it has created some stuff, it has generated some stuff, and then the Eclipse has detected that now we have a web application, right? Because the target changed, the target changed from jar to war, and Eclipse automatically, so I'm able to automatically refresh this and make sure that the layout is a web application now. Good. So the next thing we can do is scaffold from entity, right? So we're gonna scaffold this user interface. Oh. Too quick here. So, and I want to do it for all the entities in my application, right? So that's why I'm using this. This wildcard. I'm going to overwrite everything that is there already. Well, I can actually not do that, and then it will ask me, okay, there is a file that exists, like a template file. Is it okay to overwrite it? So the -- override flag would just make these things go away. So now it has generated the user interface, and you can see it here in the Java folder. You can see the participant and the task classes that we have, but also the JSF beans that have been created. And then we can just deploy that, right? So we can say click this one, run on server. I'm going to select this server. And now it's if everything is good, it's going to deploy my application on the server and open I'm actually going to use Firefox. Right. So the application is running. I have a participant. I can create a new participant myself, prepare talk, and it's not done. I'm going to add it, save, right? I have one task created here. I'm the owner. So there is a basic user interface that has been created automatically. Good. There's all kinds of other stuff that you can do, like creating JAX-RS endpoints, and all these capabilities are provided out of the box. And if something is not provided, as I told you, it works with Forge works with plugins. You can always install new plugins. So there's a Forge command that has a list plugins, a Forge plugin that has a list plugins command. And now I don't have plugins available. But assume, I told you that I'm also working on Hibernate tools. Assume that you want to reverse engineer a database and do basically the same thing that I did, but for an existing database. Then you could go and search for plugins for Hibernate tools, for instance. Yeah, and then it will connect. Okay. We're not authenticated. Oh. Okay, so normally it would connect online, but I don't know, it's probably a proxy setting or something like that is bad. But it would go online and look for available plugins that are out there. So luckily I have the sources here. So I can also install, I would be able to install this plugin from the sources. So the sources are in this particular folder. And if I issue this command, then it would basically invoke the build on those sources, a Maven build, and then install the Hibernate Tools plugin, the Hibernate Tools Forge plugin into Forge, right? So there's 2 plugins that have been activated, connection profiles, and generate entities. So just to show it, I have a little database running here. So there's a database running called Sakila with a number of tables that are all populated, right? So let's, just for the heck of it, let's try to create an application, new project named Sakila. I'm going to use the default, and then I'm going to set a persistence provider, Hibernate, container, JBoss AS7. I'm going to use the default again. So it basically does the same thing for this application, and then I have a number of connection profiles normally available. List, okay. So I had already defined this connection profile for the Sakila database, so it knows where to connect to and what the driver is and stuff like that. So basically, what I can do now is generate entities with a particular connection profile. It asks me for the password. There is none in this case. I'm going to go with the default package, and it just creates these. So the Hibernate Tools plugin would just create all these different classes, right? And then if I would do scaffold setup, and scaffold from entity, and now I'm going to choose override. It will just generate the user interface for this, right? And then, of course, there is one thing that I need to do. I need to change this, or there's a couple of things. I need to basically deploy the data source to JBoss, and I've prepared something to do that here. So there's basically the jar file with the driver and the data source definition that are available. I can just make this thing mark it as deployable, and it will deploy it on the server. And then afterwards, I need to change this this data source into Sakila, the one that I just deployed, and I'm going to change the Hibernate auto value in update instead of drop create, and then I could just run this on the server as well, right? Okay. Let's see what it looks like here. So you see it has created this application, and I can connect to it, and I see all the data that are there already, right? So it's really neat. Right. This, as far as the demo goes, so you can really do nice stuff with, as you saw, with typing commands at the command line, and have immediately the feedback that that you can have with Eclipse. Now, how is this done? Forge is just a Java program. It uses JBoss modules under the hood to provide a platform for plugins, for Forge plugins. So on the one side, we have the Forge runtime, which is the separate Java program, and then on the other hand, we have our Eclipse Workbench. And basically, the Forge runtime is just launched as a Java launch in Eclipse, an Eclipse Java launch, and then the input and output streams that this Java launch provides are being used to to provide the feedback and in the Forge console view. Yeah? So the Forge Eclipse plugins have basically three different aspects. The runtime aspect, which will be responsible for launching the Forge runtime. There is a document that you view, that you see, that that has a particular listener, right? And upon particular events that happen in the document, Eclipse plugins get notified of some actions that they possibly need to do, like for instance, import a project, right? And then also this document, there is some how do you call it? I don't want to call it hackery because that sounds bad, but I had to do a trick, yeah, to be able to communicate, basically, because the Forge runtime and the Eclipse Workbench, they are communicating. So what I did was I provided a library, which is a Forge runtime extension, which is able to interject hidden information into the output that Forge generates, right? And it's exactly that hidden information that gets filtered out in the document, and that is used to inform the. So it's like meta information or a service channel, as you wish, that is being done on the same channel as the normal input-output of the Forge runtime. So that was for now the only. So there is only one way of communicating with Forge. It's a single-threaded, a reactive system. You ask stuff and you get stuff back. So if you want to really communicate, I needed to do, because I wanted to communicate with it and be able to know what was going on in the runtime, or what happened in the runtime, without relying on the textual output that was available. I needed to basically provide interject my own information into the output stream. So that's how this is done. Now, we are on the verge of starting. Voila. This is the Forge 1.0. So we are actually starting Forge 2.0 right now, and there are a number of things that we are thinking about to make this better. So it should be easier to extend Forge for Eclipse plugin writers. I mean, for Forge plugin writers, but it should be easier to make sure that the Eclipse Workbench knows how to react, and that probably will be done with a more declarative command UI. So in the command UI, the command API that we are using for Forge, we will be able to specify how this should look in a more graphical environment. Then, of course, the interjection of hidden characters in the output stream is kind of, trickery. So we are thinking about making Forge not single-threaded, but multi-threaded, and there will be other ways of communication. Probably JMS looks like an option there. Also, the modular structure is under review. So there's a big discussion now happening about whether we should switch to OSGI or not, as opposed to JBoss modules, which is what we are using right now. One of the advantages of OSGI would probably be that a tighter integration with Eclipse would be possible. Okay, so conclusion. Forge is a tool that gets you started quickly with all kinds of new technologies. It takes care of the gotchas and the startup cost of those technologies, and it can activate these new technologies by means of plugins. And transposing or integrating this tool into Eclipse gives you a lot of additional power, in the sense that you can immediately see what's going on in a comprehensive graphical environment, and it provides the best of both worlds. Okay, so if there's any questions, this is our URL. If you feel like you are interested and you want to talk about it, feel free to hang out in our RC channel, or drop me an email right away. If there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. Yeah. Yeah.
They're probably more related to the Forge, not to the integration with.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
It's related to the. You show that there is some kind of containers that are supported by the Forge.
Right.
Do these containers are taken from the Eclipse environment? So if I have not JBoss but the other application server, that this container will be used by the Forge?
Yeah, so this is unrelated. It's unrelated to Eclipse, the Eclipse. The question was, there are a number of containers supported. You've seen JBoss Aers and Glassfish, I think. How is this done? Is there a link with Eclipse there? No, there is no link with Eclipse, so you can provide your own implementation or your own containers that you know can be supported. Yes, yeah. So you can plug in other types of containers. Yeah.
And the second question is related to the templates that are used to generate this content.
Right.
These templates can be modified, or
yes. So you can provide your own scaffold provider, and then the templates you can use your own templates that you want to use. Right. Yeah. So this question was, can you use your own templates or change the templates that are provided by default? And indeed, you can do that. Okay. More questions? One, two, three.